Hello and welcome. In this video, we'll read the chapter The Portrait of a Lady. But before we begin, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt that someone in your family silently prays for you every day, just like the author's grandmother did? If yes, tell us who that person is in the comments below. Now let's begin. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. She often told us the games she used to play as a child. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. Difficult words, wrinkled, having many small lines or folds on the skin. Mantelpiece, a shelf above a fireplace. Drawing room, a formal sitting room in a house. Turban, a long cloth wound around the head. Loose fitting, not tight, hanging freely on the body. Beard, hair on a man's chin and cheeks. Revolting, disgusting, unpleasant. Absurd, silly, unreasonable. Undignified, not proper or respectable. Fables, short stories with morals. Prophets, holy messengers of God. Grandchildren, children of one's sons or daughters. Explanation: the author says his grandmother was old just like everyone else's grandmother. For all the 20 years he had known her, she had always looked old with wrinkles on her face. People said she was once young, beautiful, and married, but he found that very hard to imagine. There was a picture of his grandfather hanging above the fireplace in the drawing room. In the picture, his grandfather wore a big turban and loose clothes. His long white beard covered most of his chest, and he looked nearly 100 years old. He didn't seem like someone who could have a wife or children, only many grandchildren. The idea of his grandmother being young and pretty felt strange and almost unpleasant to him. She used to tell them about the games she played as a child, but they found it funny and childish. They thought it didn't suit her age and treated her stories like old religious tales she often told. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were certain that she had always been as we had known her. Old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in the spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and the other tallying the beads of her rosary. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. Difficult words: short, not tall; fat, having a large round body; bent, not straight, curved, or stooped; crisscross, lines crossing each other; terribly, very extremely; hobble, to walk with difficulty, spotless, completely clean, stoop, to bend forward or downward, rosary, a string of beads used in prayer, locks, strands of hair, pale, light in color, puckered, wrinkled, or drawn together, inaudible, not able to be heard, serenity, calmness, peace, contentment, a state of happiness and satisfaction. Explanation: the author describes how his grandmother looked. She was short, a little fat, and slightly bent with age. Her whole face was covered with many wrinkles, crossing in every direction. He and his family were sure she had always looked the same, so old that she could not grow any older. They believed she had been that way for the past 20 years. She might never have been pretty, but she was truly beautiful. She walked slowly around the house wearing clean white clothes. One hand rested on her waist to support her bent back, and the other hand moved over the beads of her rosary while she prayed. Her silvery white hair lay untidily on her pale and wrinkled face, and her lips always moved in silent prayer. The author says she was beautiful, like a winter mountain scene, completely white, calm, and peaceful, giving a feeling of comfort and purity. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. She said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing song while she bathed, and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. I listened because I loved her voice but never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot, and a red pen, tie them all in a bundle, and hand it to me. After a breakfast of a thick stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. Difficult words, constantly, all the time, continuously. Monotonous, dull, and unchanging in tone. Sing song, a rhythmical way of speaking. By heart, from memory. Bothered, made an effort or cared to do something. Plastered, coated or covered with a layer of something. Earthen, made of clay or earth. Inkpot, small container for ink. Bundle, a group of things tied together. Stale, old, not fresh. Chapati, a type of flat Indian bread. Explanation: the author says that his grandmother was his closest friend. When his parents went to live in the city, they left him in her care and they spent all their time together. Every morning she woke him up and helped him get ready for school. While she bathed and dressed him, she recited her morning prayers in a steady, rhythmic voice, hoping he would learn them by heart. The boy listened because he liked her voice but never tried to memorize the words. She prepared his school things carefully: a wooden slate covered with yellow chalk, a small clay ink pot, and a red pen. After giving him these tied together in a bundle, she fed him a breakfast of thick, stale chapati with butter and sugar. Then they both went to school, and she carried some extra stale chapatis to feed the village dogs on the way. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer. While the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in a chorus, my grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. Difficult words, attached, joined, or connected. Temple, a place of worship for Hindus. Priest, a person who performs religious duties. Alphabet, the set of letters used in a language. Chorus, a group saying or singing the same thing together. Veranda, a covered open space along the front of a building. Scriptures, holy or religious writings. Growling, making a low angry sound, of animals. The grandmother always accompanied the boy to his village school because the school was part of the temple. A priest taught the children how to read the alphabet and recite the morning prayer. The students sat in rows on both sides of the veranda, chanting the alphabet and prayer together in one voice. While they studied, the grandmothers sat inside the temple and read the holy books. When both finished their lessons, they returned home together. At the temple gate, the street dogs would gather and follow them home, growling and fighting over the chapatis that the grandmother threw to them. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. Difficult words. Comfortably, in a relaxed or settled way. Settled, established in a place to live permanently. Turning point, an important change or moment in life. Motor bus, a large vehicle for carrying passengers. Courtyard, an open space enclosed by walls or buildings. Sparrows, small brown and gray birds commonly found near houses. Explanation. After the narrator's parents got comfortably settled in the city, they sent for the boy and his grandmother to join them. This move marked a big change in the relationship between the boy and his grandmother. Although they still lived in the same room, she no longer accompanied him to school. He now attended an English school and traveled there by motor bus. There were no street dogs in the city for her to feed, so she began feeding sparrows instead, who gathered in the courtyard of their new house. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She was very disturbed. To her, music had lewd associations. It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for gentle folk. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. Difficult words rolled by, passed gradually about time. Western, relating to European or modern culture. Gravity, the force that pulls things toward the earth. Archimedes' principle, a law of physics about buoyancy in water. Distressed, upset, or worried. Lewd, indecent, or morally improper. Monopoly, complete control over something. Harlots, old word for prostitutes or immoral women. Beggars, people who ask for money on the streets. Gentlefolk, well mannered, respectable people. Disapproval, not agreeing with or liking something. Explanation. As the time went on, the author and his grandmother began spending less time together. She still woke him up and helped him get ready for school for a while. But when he came home, their conversations began to fade. When he told her about what he was learning, English words, scientific laws like gravity, Archimedes' principle, and that the earth is round, she became unhappy. She could not understand or help him with such lessons. She was upset because there was no teaching about God or holy books at his English school. When the boy later told her that music lessons had been added, she was deeply troubled. To her, music was something low and vulgar, associated with prostitutes and beggars, not with decent, respectable people. Though she didn't argue, her silence clearly showed that she disapproved, and after that, she rarely spoke to him. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel, spinning and reciting prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirrupings. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She smiled but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. Difficult words. University, an institution for higher studies. Snapped, suddenly broken. Seclusion, the state of being alone and away from others. Resignation, quiet acceptance of a situation. Spinning wheel, a device used for making thread from cotton or wool. Reciting, repeating from memory, especially prayers. Veranda, an open roofed area in front of a house. Veritable, real, genuine, true. Bedlam, a noisy, confused situation. Chirrupings, the sounds of small birds. Perched, sat, or rested on something high. Shooed, made something, especially animals or birds, go away. Explanation. When the author went to university, he was given his own room to stay in. This separated him from his grandmother, breaking the close friendship they once shared. She accepted this quiet loneliness without complaint. She hardly ever spoke to anyone and spent most of her time spinning thread on her spinning wheel and saying her prayers from morning till evening. In the afternoons, she took a short break to feed the sparrows. She would sit in the veranda breaking pieces of bread into small bits while hundreds of little birds gathered around her, making a lively, happy noise. Some birds sat on her legs, others on her shoulders, and some even perched on her head. She only smiled and never drove them away. Feeding the sparrows became the happiest moment of her day. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age, one could never tell. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer, her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. Difficult words. Abroad, in or to a foreign country. Further studies. Continuing education after school or college. Upset, sad or worried. Sentimental, showing emotions or feelings easily. Railway station, a place where trains stop. Emotion, strong feelings such as love or sadness. Rosary, a string of beads used for prayer. Cherished, held dear, valued, or loved. Imprint, a mark made by pressure. Explanation: when the author planned to go abroad for higher studies, he was sure his grandmother would be sad because he would be gone for 5 years and she was already very old. However, she showed no sadness at all. She was calm and not emotional. She went with him to the railway station to say goodbye, but she didn't speak or cry. Her lips kept moving in silent prayer and her fingers continued to move on the beads of her rosary. Before he boarded the train, she quietly kissed his forehead. The author felt the wet mark of that kiss and treasured it, thinking it might be the last time he would ever have physical contact with her. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer, and with frivolous rebukes. Difficult words, clasped, held tightly in one's arms or hands. Reciting, repeating aloud from memory. Arrival, the act of coming or reaching a place. Frivolous, not serious, light-hearted. Rebukes, mild scoldings or teasing remarks. Explanation: the author says his belief that he would never see his grandmother again was wrong. When he returned home after 5 years abroad, she came to the station to welcome him. She looked exactly the same as before, she had not aged at all. As always, she did not waste time on talking. When she hugged him tightly, he could still hear her softly saying her prayers. Even on the first day after his return, her greatest joy was spending time feeding her beloved sparrows. She playfully scolded them, showing affection as she had always done. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. Difficult words, neighborhood, the area around one's home. Thumped, hit or beat heavily. Sagging, sinking or drooping. Skins, the stressed animal hides used to cover a drum. Dilapidated, old and in poor condition. Warriors, brave soldiers or fighters. Persuade, to make someone do something by urging. Overstraining, using too much effort, causing tiredness. Explanation: that evening, something strange happened to the grandmother. For the first time, she did not offer her usual prayers. Instead, she gathered the women from the neighborhood and found an old drum. She began to sing and beat the drum, celebrating joyfully for several hours. Her song was about the return of brave warriors from war. She beat the drum with energy and happiness, even though it was old and worn out. The family had to stop her because they feared she would exhaust herself. The author notes that this was the first time in his life he had ever seen his grandmother miss her prayers. The next morning, she was taken ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. We protested, but she ignored our protests. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. Difficult words: ill, sick or unwell, mild, not severe or serious, fever, high body temperature, and death or final moment, omitted, left out or escaped. Waste, to use something carelessly or needlessly. Protested, argued or disagreed. Peacefully, calmly without disturbance. Rosary, string of beads used in prayer. Lifeless, without life, dead. Pallor, pale appearance of the face after death. Explanation: the next morning, the grandmother fell sick. Although her fever was mild and the doctor said it was nothing serious, she believed that her time to die had come. She told her family that since she had missed her prayers the previous evening for the first time, she would not waste her remaining time in talking to anyone. The family tried to convince her otherwise, but she did not listen. She quietly lay down in bed, moving her fingers over the beads of her rosary and praying softly. Before anyone realized it, her lips stopped moving, the rosary slipped from her hands, and her face became pale and calm. They all understood that she had peacefully passed away. We lifted her off the bed and, as is customary, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. All over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in her red shroud, thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirruping. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweepers swept the bread crumbs into the dustbin. Difficult words: customary, according to tradition or custom. Shroud, cloth used to cover a dead body. Mourning, expressing sadness for someone's death. Funeral, ceremony for a person who has died. Crude, roughly made, simple and basic. Stretcher, a frame used for carrying a sick or dead person. Cremated, burnt after death as part of funeral rites. Blaze, bright, strong light. Courtyard, open area enclosed by walls or buildings. Scattered, spread around loosely. Chirruping, the sounds made by small birds. Crumbs, small pieces of bread. Corpse, a dead body. Dustbin, a container for rubbish. Explanation: after the grandmother's death, the family followed their traditional customs. They lifted her from the bed, placed her gently on the ground, and covered her body with a red cloth. After mourning for some hours, they left her alone to prepare for the funeral. In the evening, when they returned to carry her body on the stretcher to the cremation ground, they saw something very touching. The setting sun filled her room with golden light, and thousands of sparrows sat silently all around, on the floor, the veranda, and even near her body. The birds made no sound, as if they were mourning her death. The author's mother brought some bread and crumbled it like the grandmother used to, but the sparrows did not eat. When the body was taken away, all the sparrows quietly flew off. The next morning, the sweeper cleaned up the uneaten crumbs from the floor.